For Adolf Hitler to escape Berlin, as so many in 1945 believe, he would need lots of help. His greatest ally had always been Italy's tempestuous ruler, Benito Mussolini. But by the summer of 1945, Mussolini has suffered a humiliating end. Assassinated by communists, his corpse is strung up by its heels. A punishment the world envisions for Hitler himself.
The final degradation. Mussolini and his mistress hang from the rafters of a gas station as Taracci, one of his hangmen, goes up. There are none to mourn.
Hitler's other close friend in Europe, Spain's Francisco Franco, clings precariously to power. But Argentina has recently fallen under the sway of its right-wing military, led by Juan Perón. Yet at first, no one suspects Perón of harboring Hitler. Under intense American pressure, Argentina had declared war on Germany in March 1945. There are also the 7,000 miles separating the two countries, a huge distance for Hitler to travel undetected. But 2 months after the war ends, Argentina and Perón fall under intense scrutiny when a pair of U-boats appears off the coast. The first, U-530, surfaces on July 10th. 5 weeks later, the second arrives. Reports immediately fly that Hitler has harnessed Nazi Germany's stealthiest weapon to make a nearly miraculous getaway.
This certainly caused quite a stir. Why would a U-boat come to Argentina after the end of the war unless there was some covert reason for it to do so?
The Argentines quickly turned the crews over to the Americans for questioning. At the U.S. National Archives, historian Tim Mulligan has uncovered the interrogators' files. They show that the first U-boat, U-530, was already at sea when Hitler disappeared.
U-530 had already been on mission since March of 1945. And in this case, the captain apparently persuaded the crew that perhaps their best option was to go to Argentina.
But the story of the second boat, U-977, raises more questions. U-977 does not leave its base in Norway until May 2nd, just as Russian soldiers are overrunning Hitler's bunker. Germany invaded Norway in 1940, and in May 1945, its armies still occupy the country. If Hitler does succeed in flying from Berlin, as the Russians suggest, he could flee to Norway. There, he could board U-977 before it sets off on May 2nd, with orders to patrol the North Atlantic. U-977 is not the only U-boat at sea at war's end. When most get news of Germany's capitulation, they surrender. But U-977 does not turn up for another 2.5 months.
Altogether, they were at sea 105 days. By contrast, the longest U.S. submarine patrol of all of World War II was only 84 days.
The journey's length leads many to believe U-977 took a detour. Perhaps it traveled to southern Argentina, or even the Antarctic, and dropped Hitler before it surrendered. Suddenly, South America is awash in Hitler sightings. Tips pour into FBI headquarters in Washington and set off alarm bells as high as the office of Director J. Edgar Hoover.
Adolf Hitler is on a ranch 450 miles northwest of Buenos Aires.
Hitler is in Bogota, Colombia.
In room 1027, Continental Hotel, Argentina.
The tips warn of rich Nazi sympathizers and secret hangouts where Hitler is hiding. Fearful Hitler's Nazi party could re-emerge in the Americas. FBI agents will spend the next decade on the case and compile a file more than 700 pages thick. But the intrepid crewmen of U-boat 977 are no help. Imprisoned for months and questioned repeatedly about Hitler, they insist he was never on board.
You would have to believe that all of these crewmen had entered a conspiracy not to say anything. That's very difficult to believe.
With Hitler sightings stretching from Europe to the Americas, pressure builds on the Allies to produce him. Military police in Germany stop thousands and even go house to house on the hunt for him. They detain this man, Heinrich Noll, numerous times. There's little sign of the German leader. But the crackdown does pay off in other ways. Soldiers nab many of Hitler's top lieutenants, men who fled Berlin as the Russians were closing in. German naval chief Karl Dönitz surrenders to the British along with munitions minister Albert Speer. British soldiers also capture Heinrich Himmler, head of the dreaded SS. When Himmler realizes his captors intend to imprison him, or worse, he commits suicide by swallowing poison. The Americans find Air Force Chief Hermann Goering hiding in Austria. They also uncover his cache of stolen art. The Allies bring 21 Nazis, all with close ties to Hitler, before an international tribunal. Judges convict 18 of the 21. They sentence 11 to hang.
The trap was sprung on scaffold number 2 at 1:19, and death came at 1:33.
More repentant than the others, Albert Speer gets 20 years in prison. Just before his turn on the gallows, Goering swallows poison and is found dead in his cell. Throughout Europe, Nazis and their collaborators suffer violent retribution. But the Dragnet does not squelch talk that the worst criminal of all, the mastermind behind the rape of a continent, is still free. More and more, there can be only two explanations. Hitler is dead, his body destroyed, or very powerful people are saving him from the hangman's noose.